the trauma spawns coping skills, like a whole web of coping skills, and they save your life. I mean, thank God we had whatever we had that we used, but then you bring all those skills into your adult life, and by then you don't need them, but they're stuck on you. It's what you use. It's the way you get by. And so it's a whole web of dysfunctional coping skills that have to be really, pulled apart and addressed. So unfortunately for emotional eaters, it's not the one thing anymore. It's like a web of things. And thankfully, because I've done, plenty of work and learned so much and lots of research about emotional eating specifically, I take the guesswork out of it for people. So they don't need 20 years of therapy to figure it out. That, it's like, if you've met one of us, you've met all of us. And so there's very clear traits that are just endemic to the emotional eater's experience, which makes it much easier to unpack it and then begin to heal.
Are you curious about discovering ways of making your life better? Then welcome to my podcast. I'm Bob Nickman, and this is The Exploding Human. Listen in while I talk with all kinds of people in the fields of personal growth, health and healing, alternative therapies, psychology, spirituality, environment, and the future. I'm looking for those answers that make life better for everyone. You'll meet cutting-edge practitioners, doctors, artists, filmmakers, business people, and those who have overcome challenges. The brave, the curious, anyone who is out there helping us humans to explore, expand, and explode. Hey, welcome to the show. This is The Exploding Human. I am Bob Nickman. My guest today is TRICIA Nelson, and we're going to be talking about emotional eating. More about that in a second. First, I'd like to invite you to visit the website, theexplodinghuman.com. Over there, you can listen to episodes, read synopses, see photos of my guests, a little bio on myself. There's a donate button if you'd like to support the show. Thank you very much. And there is a YouTube channel, The Exploding Human with Bob Nickman. Ed with Bob Nickman to find it on YouTube. And, of course, The Exploding Human Facebook page. As I said, my guest today is TRICIA Nelson. TRICIA Nelson has created Heal Your Hunger, where she helps people who have struggled with eating and have not found any other solutions through any of the 12-step programs or dieting or medication or whatever it is. She really gets to the bottom of what is the emotional reasons for eating. And she helps people to deal with that so they are able to look at the past and the present in ways where they are not craving these foods that have been so destructive in their life. She's a very open and honest person, really funny. And she talks about her own lifelong pursuit of dealing with emotional eating and how she helps others overcome their own issues through her program online. So here she is. This is TRICIA Nelson. Okay, good afternoon, Trish. It's so good to see you.
Thanks for having me, Bob. Good to be here.
Yeah, and it's been a little while, and we know each other from the past, so that's a good thing. We have some mutual friends, including my wife.
Yes, I love your wife. We definitely have that in common.
Yeah, right. We both have that in common. So that's good. That's good stuff. So we're here to talk about your program, Heal Your Hunger, and it's not about a diet. It's not about anything other than, from what I can tell, it's about getting control of how we eat, and so we don't overeat. We don't eat out of emotion or out of pain or to fill that void that's inside. And I think that is what you do. And tell us a little bit about that, and then tell me your story, because most people, as you included, arrive at a place in life due to some struggle.
Yeah, no question. I mean, I really don't teach people how to get control. The result is people feel in control, but I really help people deal with the underlying causes of their out of control eating. And that really helps them just be a lot more neutral around food, where it's not a compelling issue for them. And that was based on my own experience, because I had the same issue of emotional eating, which at the time, I didn't think it was emotional eating. I didn't even know what those words meant, back in the day. I just knew that I liked food. So I liked food a lot. I like to cook. I like to eat. I like to serve it to other people. I like to go out to dinner, to restaurants. So food is a big highlight for me, which wouldn't have been a problem had I not gained weight so easily. So I really did. I gained weight really easily. And by age 21, I was 50 pounds overweight. And that was a pretty miserable experience for me, given that I'd tried so many things. So I tried diets, I tried exercise programs, and what I like to call pills, potions, and lotions. So, there's a million things out there you can try. And anything I tried would work for a time, but it would always end up not working, where I'd put the weight back on. I mean, I could lose weight, most people can, but keeping it off was what I could not do. And so I had like 5 different sizes of pants in my closet because I never knew what size I'd be. And I was always holding out for the skinny jeans. I was hoping they'd fit at some point, but it was a roller coaster ride. And, it's for those who struggle with food and weight, it's a very dark journey, even though we don't come across as very dark. We tend to be happy-go-lucky. This was me, at least. I was happy-go-lucky and, gregarious and social and all this, but I had a private life, and the private life was binge eating, which I never really did in public because it was embarrassing. But, I'd get my binge foods and sit in front of the TV and veg out and eat and then overeat and then feel sick and stuffed and then the darkness would set in, all the self-recrimination, hating myself, being mad at myself, feeling like there I am doing it again. What a loser I am. There's no diet I do that I can stick to. So that was, my life for a long time. And what happened for me is I was blessed to meet somebody who showed me how to address and heal the underlying causes. And I tried everything, Bob. I mean, I was somebody, when I called myself a loser, I mean, I tried everything and to the point of trying 12-step programs, and for food, therapy. I even went to an eating disorders therapist twice a week for a year. So I was no slouch. I was really doing it at every level I was trying. So I felt like a hopeless case. And then the person I met who ended up helping me sort of specialized in hopeless cases, thankfully. And so that's really when I did turn things around. And so, and that was many years ago. And I started helping him help others. It was with many addictions, actually, not just food, but the food was, to me, the hardest to overcome because you have to eat. You can't just put the plug in the jug. And so based on that, I started Heal Your Hunger about 5 years ago. I founded my podcast, The Heal Your Hunger Show. I wrote my book, Heal Your Hunger, and then started my program, which is an online program helping people heal the underlying causes.
Wow. So it sounds like you really did explore all the possibilities that you could, which is a little bit scary at the end there if you haven't found an answer when you've tried everything.
Yeah.
And, like you say, it is something you have to do. You have to eat or you die. You have to do that.
Yeah.
And I'm always sort of interested in the fact that when a baby is born, the first way that they relate to the world is through their mouth. They can't really do anything else. So it's very tactile. It's, if they're breastfed, they're doing that, but they're always, the first thing they do is they put their fingers in their mouth to soothe themselves. They are always, making those noises,
right. Yep.
crying, all these things that have to do with the mouth. It's the first connection that we have as humans to the world. It's the way, so I don't know where these eating issues come from all the time, but I think some of it is maybe could be even just from infancy in certain situations, and then home life and trauma and training. So let's talk about some of that stuff.
Sure. Yeah, no, I agree. And I can't really remember a time when I wasn't fixated on food, orally fixated, and fixated on food. And I certainly did have sexual abuse in my past. So from like age 5 to 10, I had, a relationship with somebody older than me, and obviously at an entirely inappropriate age to become sexual. And so that was part of my life, and a compulsive masturbation came with it. And shame, it goes without saying. I mean, I had a ton of shame, ton of secrecy, a ton of, believing that I was bad, that my sexuality was bad. And I carried that into my adulthood, because you don't talk, when you have sexual abuse, you don't talk to anybody about it. It's all a secret, right? So
you don't even know what it is, really.
Totally. You don't know what's happening to you. So that was a big part of, probably, I had a big piece of my, of fueling my overeating, plus the weight gain as well. When I got into adolescence, you just don't know what to do with your feelings. Like, you just don't know what to do, and you aren't talking to anybody about them or getting support in any way. So no question, that was a big part of it. But, my experience with my clients is that everybody wants to find the one thing that kind of, made it all happen. And I can't even speak to that as the one thing, because what happens when you have trauma as a kid is that you use whatever you can use to get by. Like, it's like you're grasping at whatever you can. And when you're super little, you don't have a lot. Masturbation, that was helpful. I learned, that was a learned skill at the time, but food was definitely, right there, and it is useful. I mean, it probably saved my life, as a 5-year-old, to have food to fixate on and to comfort myself with. And there's other things as well, like personality traits as well, that trauma spawns. Like, if you grow up with alcoholism or some kind of dysfunction in your family, you better become a people pleaser, and make sure you're not pissing anybody off, or at least you're mitigating somebody who is pissed off, mitigating their behaviors. So people pleasing becomes another trait that fuels emotional eating. Caretaking, becomes a trait that fuels emotional eating. And these are all things that we learn based on dysfunction in the family. And so when people are like, I want to know the one, I just got to get therapy and deal with that one thing, that one trauma. It's not that clean. It doesn't work. Not that that's so easy to do in and of itself, but it's like the trauma spawns coping skills, like a whole web of coping skills, and they save your life. I mean, thank God we had whatever we had that we used. But then you bring all those skills into your adult life, and by then you don't need them, but they're stuck on you. It's what you use. It's the way you get by. And so it's a whole web of dysfunctional coping skills that have to be really, pulled apart and addressed. So unfortunately for emotional eaters, it's not the one thing anymore. It's like a web of things. And thankfully, because I've done, plenty of work and learned so much and lots of research about emotional eating specifically, I take the guesswork out of it for people, so they don't need 20 years of therapy to figure it out. That, it's like, if you've met one of us, you've met all of us. And so there's very clear traits that are just endemic to the emotional eater's experience, which makes it much easier to unpack it and then begin to heal.
Yeah, it's very common. You see a lot of people that have food issues, and it's here's something that I've said before on a different episode, and I don't know if it gets people upset or not, but when I hear about the stereotypical character of the jolly fat person, I don't believe it. I just think it's not true. I think it is what you're talking about. It's this exterior, this people pleasing, because I know if I put on 20 pounds, which is a huge amount for me, I don't feel good. I just don't feel good. And I'm assuming other humans don't either. So I don't buy it. I find, and I'm not trying to say to anyone who's listening who's overweight that, you're unhappy, but you probably are.
Yeah. Well, it's
about
true.
Something you might not be, but I just, and this idea of fat shaming that's going around, I'm not doing that here. I'm just talking about health and mental health and physical health.
No, I'm with you. And I do have some people, because when they learn what I do, I will have some people say, oh, I don't do that. And yet they're obese. And I think to myself, well, you might not be aware of it because the food's working. The food is very useful for keeping us numbed out. And so we sometimes aren't aware of being unhappy. And that was actually me. Like as I said, I just thought I liked food, but I was hiding and running very fast from myself and from the darkness that I actually felt. And I ran so hard and so fast because I was so afraid if I stopped and looked at that darkness, it would totally engulf me, So the food is very effective for keeping that happy persona for sure. But I do know that in my inner life, it's just not comfortable to be. It's not comfortable to be, overweight. I mean, my legs chafed, in the beach with the salt water at the beach. If I dared to put on a bathing suit, my legs would chafe, the muffin top feels terrible. Just feeling sweaty. I mean, I would sweat after a binge because my metabolism would speed up from all the carbs I was eating. It's just, there are so many levels of hell, that one endures when they're a binge eater. And again, I think it is, a cultural, mask to think that we're so happy, but we are burying so much. And there are people, Bob, who may not care. They just might not care. They may totally eschew, convention and, cultural stigma, and for that reason, that's good if they don't really give a rat's ass who, what they look like. I just wasn't that person. Like I was kind of plagued by it. Like I really hated being fat. I hated it. I hated every day that I was fat. I had a roll on my tummy that I would scrunch up in my hands and imagine cutting off because it was fat. And I'm thinking, well, when you have a steak and there's fat on the side of the steak, you cut off the fat on the side of the steak. And then, it's just fat after all. And I'm thinking, well, this is just fat on my tummy. Maybe I could cut it off. I mean, how crazy. Thank God I didn't try that. But I even thought about sometimes it would cross my mind to get a disease where I'd lose weight automatically without having to diet. Or I even considered joining the army. So I'd be forced to exercise at boot camp because I hated exercise. So, when you're having some crazy thoughts like that, there's some pain there.
Absolutely. I know that I used to eat a lot of, when you mentioned carbs, but I used to eat a lot of pasta when I wanted to check out. I would purposely do it. I knew that it did that. Big bowl of pasta, nap.
Right.
Don't have to deal with life. And it was, and I would say I need some ballast, something grounding, something heavy, so I don't have to deal with whatever, I might not be wanting to deal with. It was no different than, wanting to get drunk or something like that. It was just a way to not be present.
Yeah, no question.
And there's something very frightening to people, myself included, about looking at pain. Because you think on some visceral level that if you do look at it, it's never going to stop. You'll start crying and you'll never stop crying.
Right.
And that it's not, true. And you can't.
And that you're stuck with whatever you see, whatever you learn, you're going to be stuck with it and you can't escape it, which isn't true. It's like the quickest way to get out of it or to have it released and healed is to look at it. So
I think that there's probably certain foods that you see on a regular basis that people are using to do these things to cover emotions or suppress them that are more common than others. For instance,
pasta. Yeah, you called it. I mean, pasta. Carbs carbs have a serotonin effect, and so they do calm us for sure. They have a calming effect on the body. I know for myself, it was my 3 favorite food groups, which are sugar, fat, and carbs, So if you get them all in one item, like you're golden. So that's how it was for me. I mean, I am totally a sugar addict. So I'd say sugar was my number one thing that I wanted. And it is highly addictive. It's been proven to be, more addictive than heroin. So there's no question that, if you start eating sugar, you're going to want more sugar if you are predisposed to that. And I do think that I was a blackout drinker from 14. So I am physically highly allergic to alcohol as well. And I do feel like it's just an extension of my addiction, my propensity, like to be allergic to sugar as well. Like sugar and alcohol is the most refined form of sugar there is. So my addiction to sugar was akin to my addiction to alcohol as well. It just super impacted my body, in a really severe way. So, there's definitely the physical aspect of this, but then of course there's the emotional aspect. And if you take the physical out of the picture, but you still crave, well, that's the emotional craving, And so I think we do crave heavier foods like carbs, like bread, like candy, like cake, like ice cream. Ice cream was my number one, chips and all that stuff, all the snacky, high calorie, empty calorie foods. But because they're so dense and high calorie and they do deaden the feelings. Like they do the job. Like I didn't binge on salads because I would have still felt my feelings, right?
I'm loaded on broccoli. I can't move.
It just doesn't happen. And that's because there's a purpose to it. And I'll give you my little PEP test. PEP is an acronym, PEP. Okay. And this is kind of as a way if some people are like, that's bullshit, I just like food, this is a way to start making the connection between your emotions and your eating or your several trips to the kitchen of an evening. So the first P stands for painkiller. So I use food to kill pain, just like we were talking about, numbing out, checking out for sure. And there's plenty of pain to go around, trauma, we address trauma, a job that doesn't fit, a marriage that's not working anymore, a dysregulated kid, a parent that's aging. I mean, there's so many different things that go on in our lives that cause pain. And we use, I just talked to somebody, actually was on somebody else's podcast, and she's like, oh my God, I'm so glad we're talking. She said, I just had a miscarriage. And she said, all I'm doing is eating. Like I can't stop eating,
sure.
So we use food to kill pain. So that's the painkiller. The E stands for escape. And, oftentimes we're just overloaded, overwhelmed, and have an inordinate amount of fear. So I was very fearful. And I find this is very common of emotional eaters is we have a lot of fear and anxiety and worry. And so food's a great way to shut that all down. Again, all my goodies, good TV show, boom, I'm in another world, and so that was a big part of it. And the last P in PEP stands for punishment, which is counterintuitive, right? Because we think of our yummy foods as a reward, but the way I ate them, I was no longer rewarding myself. I mean, I was eating to excess to the point of feeling sick, then hating myself, then canceling, a lunch with friends because I feel so sick and bloated. So all of a sudden it's like, what are you doing to yourself? Like, what are you doing to yourself and why? And I find that overeaters tend to be overfeelers and we feel guilty about everything. So we do beat ourselves up, and food is a great way to beat ourselves up. And oftentimes it's all three, painkiller, escape, and punishment all wrapped up in one. First, you're just trying to kill some pain. Then you're taken totally out of your reality, and then you hate yourself later. So it all works, but that's just a way for people to start kind of thinking, oh yeah, maybe there is something emotional about my binges.
I wonder if some people feel like if something's happened to them, they must have deserved it or it wouldn't have happened. And so that's where the punishment comes from. I deserved to be, screamed at every day by my parents. Let's pick that one because that's a common one.
Yeah.
And I hated the way I felt. I wanted to escape. I wanted to soothe myself. But I must be a bad kid because they wouldn't have yelled at me if I wasn't. So you've got all three right there, just from the way a parent might talk to a child.
No question. Yeah. And I think we do have a consciousness for self-hatred. I know I did, especially back having, feeling ashamed of my sexuality. There's no question. I thought it was bad. I used to say to my mentor, he used to say, you think you're bad, don't you? And I just say, I know I'm bad. Like I literally believed it,
mm-hmm.
from such a young age. So no, there's no question. The messages we got as children, boy, oh boy, they run deep.
I always say I do not hate myself, but I'm not a fan.
Yep, I
I'm a
totally
level
get
up.
Yeah.
You're not like a licensed therapist at all.
No,
You are
no.
in the trenches, boots on the ground, experiential
Yeah.
healer is really what you're doing. You're saying, hey, this is what worked for me. I was a lost case as far as I could tell, and I found a way, and I'm going to pass that on to you. So let's say I am somebody who is in the the swirling abyss of overeating and emotional eating and feeling terrible. And I call you up and I say, Trish, help me. How would we start? And what would that look like?
Yeah, well, I do speak with people kind of in a breakthrough, like emotional eating breakthrough session. I or one of my coaches, and it really looks like figuring out if somebody is a fit for what I do. My experience is the whole weight loss journey is a journey. Like it is many years, if not decades long journey. And like I said, I started at the diets, the real symptom approach. Like, let me just get this weight off of me. And then you realize that's not going to work. So you go a little bit deeper, some psychological approaches or, something like that, and spiritual approaches and that kind of thing. So it's sort of you're moving through these different things, but oftentimes a lot of what people do is still symptom related. And my experience is you got to go deeper. Although I was not able to heal my eating disorder through therapy because I was it's sort of like an amalgamation of different things I found that worked for me. Like I had to get out of my head and thinking about, my thinking problem. I had to get deeper into my heart and unload some of the pain that was trapped in my heart. But anyway, point is, I do teach people what I do. And so, but they have to be ready. And the readiness comes from kind of knowing that it's not about the food. So that's what I will tell people first is let's establish that you've done a jillion diets. Like if this is the case, you've done many different things that were symptom related. And if you're feeling like you totally suck because you couldn't get it, hey, you weren't going to get it. Like you're not going to get it dealing at the symptom level. You're just not. So we got to go deeper. And, most approaches are really fixed on what you're eating, how much you're weighing, how you feel about the food and all that kind of thing, but still it's all around the food. My overweight comes from overeating and overeating comes from what's eating me. So that's really where we have to go. So if somebody like gets that and they're ready for that deeper journey, then we can rock and roll, and if that's the case, the people work with me I mostly do my work through groups. So I have online, I work with everybody online. So anybody around the world can access my work. And so I have a step-by-step process for people to heal. And I lay this out in a program that's it's like an online portal. It's password protected and they're watching videos and doing homework assignments. And then we're getting together on Zoom. So I meet with my clients on Zoom in groups and they're small. They're like, 20, 25 people. But everybody can share. It's very loving, a lot of connection, a lot of sense of community. A lot of cheering each other on. And it was just so healing in and of itself because we've spent so many years in isolation, so many years thinking we're the only one who've done the crazy things we've done around food and weight into our bodies. So just being around people who've done the same crazy things or thought the same crazy things helps tremendously. But then people are moving through the work that I lay out, the step process that I lay out. And it's just super healing for them. And it really, I can really shorten people's learning curve because I've researched this. I mean, it's all I've done my whole adult life is work with emotional eaters, so it just takes a lot of the guesswork out of it for people. There's a lot of, when it comes to food, there's a lot of nebulous notions that that didn't work for me because I'm such a hopeless case. So like things like mindful eating, which is a beautiful term. It's a beautiful concept, not enough for me to get over the finish line. Mindful eating, moderation. Again, if you're a sugar addict, yeah, it's kind of like an alcoholic, not going to work. It's just not going to work. Moderation, intuitive eating. These are, sound concepts, but if you're, somebody like me who ate like I ate, it's not going to work. I mean, I would intuit that I should eat all the time, all the time. I'm like, intuitively, I need another cookie. so it often will fail somebody. so these kinds of terms are really nebulous and leave people thinking they're the only ones who can't get it, And so I really take the guesswork out of it and create very practical actions people can take in self-care. Self-care is vital. And then just kind of the combination of things that I'm teaching people, not a whole lot around actual eating. People come to me not for nutritional advice. Like my experience as emotional eaters who've been studying this and studying nutrition and books and courses, my experience is they are not stupid and they know that salads are better than pizza. So it's like, it's just, they can't follow through on what they know. Right. So that's like, they know. And that's the most frustrating place to be, is like, I know what I should be eating. I know it's a healthy choice, but that's not what I want, and then hence we go with the other option and then we're in trouble. So it takes a lot of the guesswork out of it, but I don't really teach a lot about food nutrition because it's really the follow through and being able to connect the dots that I help people with.
But there are certain foods that people must arrive at the fact that they can't eat them at all. They must just be, there's certain, I know like Overeaters Anonymous has red light, yellow light, green light foods,
Yeah.
And I thought that was kind of an interesting concept to go, that's an absolute red light. I'm not touching it. That will send me over the edge. Sugar. Yeah.
And I think, and I'm the same way. I'm a sugar addict. So it just helps me. I actually teach something called I just got done with something called the 5-day quit sugar challenge. So I help people get off of sugar and I teach them where to find sugar in the foods they're eating, even the healthy foods they're eating. So yeah, no, I subscribe to that. Like I've had enough trial and error with certain foods that are triggering, to know that, I'm better off. I'm actually kinder to myself when I'm not eating certain foods that make me crave. It's a kinder, so we're like, I don't want to feel deprived. Well, what are you depriving yourself of? Getting, losing control, hating yourself, being bloated, not fitting in your pants. Like I'd rather deprive myself of those things.
I have someone I know has sugar issues, and she's not eating sugar now, but when she does eat sugar, which has been a while, she gets paranoid. Really afraid of people are out to get me, and that person hates me, and I can't go out right now. I'm too afraid. And literally when she stops sugar, it doesn't happen.
That's fascinating. I've never heard of that, but yeah, it's a drug.
And doesn't alcohol and sugar have a relationship too? Because you see a lot of people that are sober a long time, but they don't have a handle on their food, and they realize 10, 20 years into their sobriety that they're really big and they can't stop eating.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, the big book recommends people eat chocolate and candy and to get sober. So that doesn't help, any emotional eater is like, cool, but yeah, I mean, my experience is, why stop one addiction only to die from another? Like really, like that's not freedom, and so that's why going deeper is so important, and addressing, all the addictions. And, of course, if you're trying to get sober and you're, just coming off of, a really dangerous lifestyle on account of your alcohol and drug use, pay attention to that first, but definitely, it's really important. Somebody just joined my Quit Sugar Challenge who was just getting sober. And she's like, all I did was switch addictions, and now I'm just as enslaved as I was. And to me, it's like that's why the deeper, journey is so important, because it's really not about any of the substances. Like those are symptoms. We have to get down to the things that are making us hate ourselves. We can't just shrug that off, and no diet. And that's why diets are so ineffective, because a diet is not going to heal that stuff either. Not to mention, we need new tools for living. If you just take away the alcohol or the sugar, and you don't have tools to cope with the stress of life, and you don't have new ways to live, you're going to need something, and you're going to go back to what that's why we've got to go deeper, is so we can have a whole new set of tools. I mean, meditation, prayer, writing, journaling, walking, these are all things that for me, have replaced the food. And not to mention just really addressing and healing that trauma from the past, the things that kind of made us people pleasers in the first place, and to stop the people pleasing. Like there's a lot of, everyday traits that the emotional eater exhibits that I really focus on. So I don't even send them back to their childhood initially. I'm like, let's stop packing your schedule with things because you can't stand to be with yourself. Like, let's create some, time in your day where you can be still and quiet and just start building that relationship with yourself, which we're all so afraid of initially. We're so afraid of our feelings. We're so afraid of finding out that we really are terrible people, which we're not, and we have to spend time getting to know who we are, and having practices that can help us get connected with ourselves so that being with ourselves without numbing is not such a horrible idea.
The people pleasing thing is a really interesting trait. And when somebody stops doing it, like, you want to please people if you're a people pleaser because you want them to like you. And, and people can sense in a nonverbal way, even that somebody is that type of person, and they will take advantage of that situation sometimes.
Yep.
And if that person stops people pleasing, their biggest fear actually does happen where the person doesn't like them because they've stopped pleasing them. So then you actually have to face, I would imagine, that's not one of my things, but I do know plenty of people pleasers where they go, that person, they hate me now because I won't do what they want anymore.
Yeah. Well, and the truth that I once saw a little meme that was like, you can't pay your bills with what people think of you, and it's like, like how good does it, like how much good does it do us to be liked? I mean, I was a consummate people pleaser. I was like, just totally prostrate myself for people's good, thoughts and feelings and validation. Again, that came from my childhood where I didn't have a strong sense of myself. So I got it from outside of myself by all my good acts. And the problem with people pleasing is you not only knock yourself out, but you're also totally resentful because nobody's ever as pleased as we plan on them being. Like it never fills us to the extent that we want to be filled, and so we're mad about it, and all that we did to please. So it sort of comes down to really determining, is the payoff worth it? Doing like staying up late at night, taking on all the extra projects, destroying my health. Is it really worth it? Or would it, would the cost of a few people's, thoughts about me, or thinking less of me, would that cost, really pale compared to how good it feels to start listening to what I want and how I feel about something and actually liking myself? Wow, what a concept.
I remember I made this friend of mine laugh. He asked me to do something for him years ago. And I go, nah. And he goes, why not? I go, because I don't want to help you. And we both laughed really hard. He just loved that. He goes, okay.
Yeah.
And we stayed friends. It wasn't anything, but it was just, one of those great moments where it was just too honest for us not to find it funny. And, what I find is that you, when you are true to what you really want to do, and, you don't have to be a selfish person, but stay true to what you want to do, then you do attract people of like thinking and of like sensibility. And you don't even get those kind of people anymore in your life. If like you change you, and I'm sure this is what you talk about, you change you and everything around you changes, including the type of people that are attracted to being around you.
Yeah, no question about it. And I think that's what my clients love about me, because I'm super direct. I do it with love, but I'm super direct because it's like, hey, I don't want to waste your time. I want to just tell you how I see it, and we can cut to the chase and get like heal faster. We can just heal faster.
This friend of mine who, he's a sober guy, but he also is struggling with his weight. And as somebody who, this podcast is about health and healing. That's what I do with this thing. And, food and healthy eating is part of what this podcast is about. So I was talking to him about some options for changing what he's eating. And he got furious with me. He goes, well, I'm not going to do that because I want to have something delicious. He was like really angry. And I'm like, I go, just a suggestion. You don't have to do it. But if what you're doing is not working, you might want to make a change. But he's not ready. He doesn't want it.
Yeah.
And
well, that's true. But I have to tell you also, he doesn't know that he can have the craving removed. See, when somebody's hooked on something and dependent on it, the idea of not having it is terrifying, right? Because it's sort of, it's the glue that's keeping everything together, but they don't realize. And I find this because for people who've struggled with their weight for so long, they kind of want to like give up hope. Like they want to just give up because all anybody ever gives them is a diet, and they can't do the diet. 95% of all diets fail. Most people can't do the diet. Oh. So the idea that you could be free from your cravings, that would be a total game changer where like you actually, if you didn't care, it's like, if you didn't have a need for, excess ladders in your house, you wouldn't really want a ladder. Like you would have no craving for a ladder, and that's how it is with the food. People think they're going to crave it, but not be able to have it. And that, I agree, that would be hell, but you can actually not crave it to where not having it is no big deal.
Yeah. I've tried to explain that it's,
he might not be right.
It's not easy being human.
Right.
I'm coming back as something else next time. So if people want to get a hold of you and maybe take a little dive into what you're doing and get some assistance, how do they do that? Tell them how to do it.
My website is healyourhunger.com. That's HEAL, healyourhunger.com. My podcast is the Heal Your Hunger Show, and I riff a lot on my personal experience of healing. Also, I'm on Instagram at TRICIA NELSON _ at the end of TRICIA NELSON. And then for those who want to be part of a community on Facebook, I have the Secret Sauce to End Emotional Eating on Facebook. It's a private Facebook group for emotional eaters.
Well, you must have a big community because there's a lot of people that have these things going on.
Thanks to you and being on shows like yours, it's growing, and I'm excited to, there's nothing I love more than seeing the lights go on from somebody who's struggled for, decades with their weight.
Can you tell me a story of great success? Obviously no names, but
yes.
What is something that's just where you went, oh, this is so wonderful. I'm so happy to see this transformation, because I like the specifics.
Totally. Thanks for asking. I have a lot of clients. As I said, I did this Quit Sugar Challenge last week, and I must have had about 10 different clients share their experiences. But one of them, her name is Hannah, and she's in her 30s, and she has 5 kids. She adopted 3 kids who are all sisters from different misters. Okay. So she adopted these 3 kids and who weren't easy kids, because of what they'd been through in their lives already. But she has 5 kids, all like under the age of 10. And she was an emotional eater and struggling. And she joined my program. And she's been with me for a little while now. And her life is so transformed. She's lost 45 pounds. But more than that, she is such a different mother than she was at the beginning, of her journey. And she told me the other day that she was at a crossroads with her kids. Everything was this past weekend, everything was going haywire. And all she knew what to do, she's like, okay, we're all going to meditate right now. And for 15 minutes, these kids under 10 and her husband, they all sat and meditated for 15 minutes. She's like, Trisha, I would never have done that had I not known you, because I do teach people how important meditation is for bringing down their stress, helping them be more emotionally balanced, and just getting connected with their divine spirit. So that was really funny. She said, my kids, and that her kids also eat on a regular schedule. So they eat 3 meals now and they don't snack. And she's like, that's all because of this. Like everything is so much more ordered and calm and balanced on account of this healing journey I'm on. So that's just one of many stories. But I think because she's a mom, and it could have gone so different, had she been stressed out and eating and hating herself, those kids are getting a real beautiful life.
Yeah, motherhood is about as high stress of a thing to be doing in life as anything, because
No
there's
kidding.
never consistency with children. They're always doing something that unexpected, and they don't have the type of ability to manage their lives yet. So
Yeah.
it's always a wild card. Somebody's sick, somebody's doing something, somebody's hurt,
Yeah.
somebody's having a tantrum. It's just there's always something. So good for her. I love hearing
Yeah.
that story. So thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. And
Oh, thanks for having me.
yeah, and I hope people go visit Tricia at her website, Heal Your Hunger, and find out more. Lose that weight, feel good about yourself emotionally, and be kind to yourself. How about that?
Amen. Amen. It's all so important.
Thank you. Thanks for listening to The Exploding Human. Much appreciation. Check out the website, theexplodinghuman.com. The YouTube channel, The Exploding Human with Bob Nickman, and The Exploding Human Facebook page. And many big thanks to TRICIA Nelson for coming on the show and talking about Heal Your Hunger. Hope you guys check that out. Have a blessed day. Thank you.